Awesome. Okay, welcome everybody to the sixth episode of Unboxing New Music with Boon Hua. And today I have a very lovely guest here today, tonight actually, Tan Yuting. Yay. So we were
Hi.
just speaking before before this session, and I realized that when I left YST was when she came in. She came in 2012. I left at 2011, and then we were completely shocked at how that was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. So, why don't we start there and would you like to tell us more about yourself, how you got into music, how you found your way into YST, and then to all the different schools that you've been to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think like a lot of people or a lot of my friends, I started piano lessons when I was about 4 or 5 with Yamaha Music
Hmm?
School, like the Yamaha music program. And then I later took on some private piano lessons as well. And I was in Yamaha until I was about 12 or 13. So that kind of, and in Yamaha, they really emphasized a lot on improvisation, oral skills, and
Ah,
also a bit of composition. Like I remember they would have these like sort of 8 bar exercises where they would give you like the first 2 bars and then your homework to like go home and complete the next like 6 bars, that kind of thing. But I guess I only really started composing in the music elective program in MEP during my time in secondary school and JC. And I think that was also the time when I found out that you could actually study music composition in uni. Yeah. Um, yeah, so applying to uni, I decided to apply to study music. Um, yeah, at the same time, I was very torn. I also applied to like more practical programs, like business and stuff like that. But obviously, I ended up doing music. And so, like, in terms of choosing YST, actually, funding was a very big factor. I remember really wanting to go overseas to study music when I was in JC, but I didn't get overseas scholarship, so I went to YST. But on hindsight, going to YST was probably one of the best decisions I made. Yeah, because
I mean, mhm. Sorry, please.
yeah, I mean it's a small school, you get lots of attention, which is really good when you're still like building your foundation with composition. Yeah, in the end, I still got to have that overseas experience because I did the joint degree program with Peabody Conservatory. So
Uh-huh.
I got to spend 3 semesters of my undergraduate studies in Peabody as well. So that was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we share
You're
very, very
going,
similar experiences too. Charity was
yeah.
saying because you met her at YST. Um, I mean, this is I don't want this to be a plug for YST, which is the school that I'm teaching at now. But I think it's one of the very rare schools in the world that offers full scholarship for all the undergraduate students. I mean, the obvious comparison being Curtis in Philadelphia, where everybody goes in on the full ride, and Coburn as well, I think in LA. But I mean, on this side of the world, it really is quite something spectacular. And actually, like yourself, I actually spent 1 year studying history in NUS. I was the arts and social science. I did history, and I was completely in love with it. And actually, I didn't really. It was not kind of my goal to be a musician when I was much younger. It just kind of happened. I auditioned for YSC, I got in, and then I decided, yeah, let's do this. And then suddenly my whole world changed. But anyway, that's for another day. So I'm curious to ask about how was it when you were studying in like a MEP program in secondary school and JC? Like, do you get composition lessons, and what were your models, or how do you get started on that?
Oh, that was so long ago. um, huh. I don't really remember what happened in secondary school, but I think there were these four pieces that we had to write like four contrasting pieces for a portfolio for O level.
Mm-hmm.
And then for A levels, I think we had to do like two sets of like technical exercises and one like free composition. So I remember like my two sets of technical exercises were based on like pitch organization, and the other one was based on rhythm. Yeah. And in terms of composition like lessons, I don't think like it wasn't really like composition lessons. Like we would meet, I think in JC we met like once a week or something like that, where we would just like share our whatever we did with our teacher and our friends. So I guess it's composition lessons, but it's like group and not individual.
Uh-huh.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
So there
Not
wasn't a
sure if
very
it's
structured kind of system. It's just kind of, you are finding your way. And only when you started at YSC that you had a composition teacher kind of looking over your shoulder every week and saying, you should do this and that.
yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
And then how have your experience been in all the different schools, working with different teachers? Like what was your biggest takeaway from each of them, if I may ask?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so Prof Pro was very helpful for me in the beginning stages of my education in composition. I learned a lot about technique from him, but he also taught me to trust my instinct and like how to feel musical time internally. Like I think he just has a very good like intuition, like musical intuition. So yeah. And then at Peabody I worked with Oscar Bettison. Um, and Oscar, he taught me to be uncomfortable. Like I remember he told me to write the piece. Like actually this was one of I think this advice was actually from one of his composition teachers when he did his studies in The Hague in the Netherlands. So it's either from like Martin Padding or Louis Andriessen. But he basically passed it on to me, and he told me like to write the piece that you don't know how to write, basically. Yeah. So to always put yourself like out of your comfort zone. And I try to do that, but it's so hard because like you always have things that you like to do, and you somehow always try to go back to that comfortable area. So that's something I'm still trying to do. And at U Chicago, I mean, I'm only in the middle of my second year so far, and we rotate teachers at U Chicago. So currently, I've only worked with Sam Peter and Anthony Chung. And
And have they also been kind of challenging your comfort zone?
yeah, actually, so I worked with Sam in my first year a little bit, and he works a lot with electronic music and has a very unique perspective and approach to sound. So I learned a lot of him with regards to that. And with Anthony, he's just a great inspiration for me. He's like the most knowledgeable person, like one of the most knowledgeable people I've met. Like a walking encyclopedia. You could ask him anything. Yeah. So he's just a really big inspiration to me. And his music is also really good. Yeah.
But that has been always my impression of composers. Like most of the composers I speak to, they always blow me away with their knowledge of so many different disciplines, so many genres. And I just feel like, wow, I really should be reading much more than I am. So how is it different in University of Chicago, where it's kind of a music department, right, versus a conservatory like at Peabody or at YST?
Definitely more academic. I mean, the environment itself is more academic, and in a conservatory, you're surrounded by performers, musicians, you know, and in a university setting, you're surrounded by music theorists, like musicologists and ethnomusicologists. So it's definitely a different learning environment. And it was actually quite hard for me to adjust to in my first year after spending like 6 years in the conservatory. Yeah, so that was the biggest change for me. And in terms of composition, there are also benefits to being in a university. They have more funding typically. And so, there are quite a lot of concert opportunities, I would say. I'm not sure if like this is just unique to U Chicago as well, but like this is what I know from my experience as well. Yeah.
So there are completely no performance majors in University of Chicago.
There is a performance program, but it's targeted towards undergraduate students. So
Uh-huh.
then, yeah, and they're usually like some of them are music majors, but a lot of them are also majors in other fields like psychology majors or something, and then
Oh wow.
they're also interested in music, so they take like a minor in music, or they just a very diverse group of people.
I feel like that's something that's really unique, especially in the States. When I was at Eastman, there were also a lot of like undergraduate students who are also doing classes in University of Rochester, taking different classes, and like, and a lot of them that do very well, they are also like double or triple majors, which is kind of scary. Like I don't know how they find time to get all these things done. Like my understanding of at least what I've heard was actually from Clay
Um,
Mathens.
yeah.
Yeah, a lovely composer. I did one or two of his pieces at Eastman, and he was telling me it was really fantastic at University of Chicago because you guys hired professional musicians to come in and kind of
Mhm.
workshop the pieces, and that's a real luxury. I mean, of course, there's a lot of fun in going around and begging your friends to do something as well, but like there's kind of an added edge where you have musicians who really know what you're doing and they can give you feedback as well. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, pros and cons, I would say. Like, um, yeah, definitely working with professional musicians. That's been really good. Like, I learned a lot from them, and it's a lot closer to like working in the real world, right? Like, whereas in the conservatory, you're always trying to gather all your friends who are performance musicians, and they have their own repertoire to learn. And you always feel like sometimes I can't help but feel like I'm troubling them sometimes. So, um, yeah, but then at U Chicago, these musicians they're hired to play your music, so that's what they're there for. Um, but at the same time, we have less interaction with them. Like in a conservatory, like I would see my friends almost every day, and like even when we are having lunch or something, I could like ask them about the piece or ask them about their instruments. Whereas you can't do that with a professional ensemble because even if you do have workshops with them, it's limited to like the time that you have during the workshop.
Hmm. Yeah. How would you say is the how would you describe kind of the musical scene in Chicago, and how is it for you kind of living
Mm,
in that city?
I'm still pretty new to Chicago, I would say. I've only been there for like 1.5 years.
Hmm.
Um, but there are a lot of new music groups that are based in Chicago, like East Blackbird, Third Coast Percussion. Um, yeah, just to name a few.
Yeah,
And
Alan Pearson
there's
teaches at
definitely a
Northwestern too,
new
right?
music. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and there are a lot of concerts both at Northwestern and at U Chicago. And then Northwestern composers also put up their own concerts. And there are actually performers at Northwestern who play new music. And yeah, so there are a lot of new music happenings going on in Chicago. Um, you can't go to all of them. And yeah, you pick and choose. And sometimes like with the Northwestern performances, they're a bit further away from U Chicago. So I need to like hitch a ride from a friend and things like that. It's not always convenient, but there's a scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually lived in Chicago for 3 or 4 months. My wife was working in Schönbrunn, which I think is quite near the airport.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and so it was really nice. I mean, I really like Chicago. It's just super cold, but other than that, it's such a wonderful city with so much. Um, Yeah, I wish I had more time to delve deeper into all the musical happenings. Um, so why you Chicago? I mean, what kind of led you there? Was it the city? Was it the teachers? Was it the school?
Um, it's a combination of everything, but a very big factor for me was also, again, it goes back to funding. um, I think at that point I was deciding between U Chicago or staying at Peabody, and
Hmm.
Peabody does not offer as much funding as U Chicago, and also I had already spent so much time at Peabody. 3 semesters of my undergraduate studies in 2 years for masters, so I thought it was time for a change of environment, and also a change of environment from like a conservatory to a university setting as well. So yeah, I guess that was why I chose U Chicago. And then when I went to visit after I was accepted, so they actually host the prospective students for a visit after you get accepted and before you accept your acceptance. And I went to downtown Chicago and I was like, this reminds me really of Singapore. Yeah, it made me feel really at home a little bit, like downtown Chicago. Although the school is not located in downtown Chicago, but it was a much bigger city than Baltimore as well. So very exciting to be there. Yeah,
Yeah, the food scene there is amazing, right? The gastronomy. I
and there's a
remember,
Chinatown.
yeah, there's a Chinatown. That's important. I used to live in Chinatown in New York, and I mean, just the access to Asian food at very cheap prices is something that cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Great. So maybe with that, we can kind of pivot into your first piece for saxophone quartet called Points, Lines, Angles, Planes. And this was written during your time in Chicago,
Yeah.
or yeah, would you like to tell us about the performers that you've written it for and why the saxophone quartet? So there's a lot of saxophone love in this series. In the first episode with Emily, we did one of her pieces, meditation, and now we're doing a saxophone quartet. So I'm curious, why the instrument? What makes it so interesting and fun to write for?
Um, Again, this this was actually my first piece for an all wind ensemble. I guess I would say like an ensemble without strings or anything else, but just like wind instruments. I previously tried writing a wind quintet when I was at Peabody, and it's just so hard to write for just wind instruments for me because I guess wind instruments is something that I'm not super familiar with compared to like strings, percussion. Like yeah, that's
Hmm,
where
okay.
usually I feel like most comfortable.
Hmm.
So um, this saxophone quartet concert was actually one of the student-led projects that year at U Chicago. So every year the students would get together and put up 2 concerts of um, our own works, and we take care of everything from big like the hiring of the ensembles all the way to like the concert itself. So like all the planning and engaging musicians and everything. They do that. I mean, we do that, but that year I wasn't involved in that since they do it the year before, and then the new students just have these 2 options to write for, and the string quartet project was full. So
So you were forced to write for saxophone quartet.
in a way, I kind of was, but I'm glad I did. Um, yeah. So this piece was written for Noise Saxophone Quartet. They're saxophone quartet that's based in Chicago. They are all graduates, or I think one of them might still be studying, doing DMA at Northwestern, but they're all from Northwestern.
Hmm.
So, and this concert, there was sort of like a theme for the concert, um, which was like architecture and design. A lot of
Ah,
people
okay. That's
didn't end
why.
up
I see.
going. Yeah, which kind of explains my title. So
Yeah.
geometry, being related to
Hmm.
architecture and design. Um, yeah, and one of the most interesting things about this concert was that they they played the pieces from start to finish without pause. So like there was no pause in between pieces. So
Cool.
there were, I think, 7 pieces, and my piece was like right in the middle, number 4. And yeah, I think altogether it was about an hour of saxophone playing, which was, yeah, kudos to them, really.
Yeah.
But this recording that we're about to hear is from a recording session. So they did a separate recording session for us because you know, it's difficult to get a good recording from a live performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So why don't we jump into the piece and just let's all take a listen to points, lines, angles, planes. And hello to all the people joining us. Zhang Yi, late again. Here we go. Great. Cool. It
Yeah.
was points, lines, angles, planes. I noticed in your bio that you talked about how harmonies and textures are two particular interests for you in your music. How did you, in this piece kind of looked at these two elements, harmonies and textures?
Um, I think I was thinking a lot of like how the entire ensemble could function as a single unit to create like a texture. So in writing the piece, I was really thinking more about like the texture before the notes. So sort of like having like the texture in mind and then having putting the harmony on top of the texture, I guess. Yeah. It's
And
also
how, Mhm.
something that I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but maybe interesting was that um, the beginning material that you hear is actually from a sketch for string quartet. So it's actually like a sketch that I wrote for string quartet, and it was all like pizzicato.
Mhm.
So it was me when it came to writing the saxophone quartet piece, and I wanted to have I didn't know where to start, and so I had this sketch for string quartet lying around that I wasn't really working on anymore. So I thought like I could just try to like use that for this piece, and it kind of worked.
I think it worked marvelously. I mean, together with this kind of the key sound, and there's a lot of character just in the opening, and it's so memorable. I can still remember pop pop the pop the pop pop. It's wonderful. And how about the second
Yeah.
the second section where it's really just kind of shimmering harmonies, that open and kind of close. At least that's what I perceive of it. Like how did that idea come about? Also from a string quartet?
No. So that part, how I came about with that section was more of like, so I wanted some, contrasting material. So I was thinking again in terms of texture, and um, so I was thinking of like what I was thinking of when writing that was like mainly glissandi air sounds, that kind of thing. And that's where I start from, and then I try to like integrate that into that section. But I think of like what kind of sound I want to hear in this section, and then try to do that in the music. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking through the comments. There's a lot of, three claps, which is
Thank
always a good
you.
sign. Kevin says very cool piece. Congratulations. I think
Thank
so too.
you.
Chung Jin says reminds her a little bit of Ligeti, meticulously written, and she loves the slow roaming, poignant harmonies in the middle. And Zhang Yi was saying it of the tongue pizzicato. It's really wonderful. I think in Singapore there is also kind of a really growing saxophone community. I see that Dr. Zachariah Gold just joined, and he started a saxophone symposium that's been running for almost 10 years now, and it's a really wonderful thing. There's so many young saxophonists coming up from Singapore. And it's just a very heartening thing to see, and I hope they are listening into this piece and hope they can perform this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charity has a really good question. Was there intentional use of kind of jazzy harmonies and rhythms because they were for saxophones?
That wasn't a conscious decision. I don't know if
Hmm.
like maybe at the back of my mind, like this might have subtly influenced me. Um, yeah,
It
I
would
think
be a very
maybe
different piece on just pizzicato, right? It would not be the same kind of, you know,
yeah, and
uh,
also the way they play it, I guess.
mhm.
Um, when you have groove involved, um, they just get into that groove a bit more and make it sound a little more jazzy. And yeah, so I don't think it was like very an intentional use of more guess yeah, maybe more subconscious.
Intuition. Emily asked, how did you decide which of the two characters come first in the form?
I thought the opening material was so like captivating. Like it just like catches your attention, you know, that I just wanted it to be like the first thing that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess that was how I decided that. But it would be very interesting if I flipped that as well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I remembered one of my mentors, Peter Edvo, she was talking about like compositions, and he was saying something about like it has to grab your attention in the first like 10-20 seconds. I mean, he judges so many competitions, and he was always saying how that first impression is so important. And like I say, like if I can still remember how the opening piece is, then it's like it's double thumbs up because it's so captivating immediately, and it catches people's attention. That's great. Um, Maybe from saxophones we can kind of pivot into orchestral music and also into your next piece, Ashes and Embers. And this was written during your time at Aspen Music Festival.
It was before. So we have to have two pieces written before we get there. An orchestra piece
Okay.
and a chamber piece.
And how was your experience there?
So
And
many concerts. Yeah. Oh, my experience at Aspen. Yeah. So yeah, there were so many concerts, so many good musicians, and um, I really enjoyed working with the musicians in the Aspen Contemporary Ensemble. I wish we had more time with them. You know, they put up a concert every week with new repertoire every week. So um, it's impossible, almost impossible to get time from them outside of their rehearsal time and their practice time. But yeah, then a lot of nature. Aspen's a really pretty place. Yeah.
and how about would you introduce a little bit about Ashes and Embers and how like, what were the inspiration, what were the ideas behind this piece?
Yeah. So I think the musical material sort of came first. Like for this piece, I knew I wanted to like reverse the dynamic shape of the piece, where the loudest section or climax like in the first half of the piece, and then from there it's like a giant diminuendo. So I had this like concept for the piece, and then like for the title, I sort of have like I had like a visual image at the time. When I was writing this piece, it was also when Notre Dame in Paris it caught on fire, and I remember seeing the news and the images of it. It was just so, I don't know, it was so devastating for the French people, but also like just the image of the burning building was a really powerful image for me, and it kind of just stuck with me. And I was working on that piece like day and night during that time because um, we didn't really have a lot of time to write this piece plus the chamber piece before the festival. Yeah, so that was the visual image I had in mind when I was writing the piece, and that explains the title Ashes and Embers.
Wow, that image really, I remember it was kind of shared on Facebook and everybody was just kind of shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe without talking more, let's just play the music and so everybody can just let that kind of sink in. So let me just pull this out. Okay, this is Ashes and Embers. Wow. Whew. I mean, the opening really, I mean, now I can see the opening, the wind passages really like kind of the flames and really going up and down and really aggressive. Um, cool. Kevin is saying this really reminds me of George Enthal's Ballet Mechanic.
Oh, I never thought about it. Actually, the percussion ensemble played that piece at Aspen, but I mean that was when my piece was already done. So,
Uh-huh.
it's not that's not in like any. I didn't get any inspiration from that piece per se. But, yeah, interesting.
Since this is your third orchestral piece, right? And I'm wondering like what was particularly challenging or interesting for you to write for the orchestral medium as compared to writing for a chamber uh, size ensemble?
Well, I think for orchestra is always challenging, right? So many instruments. Um, I think in my first orchestra piece, I didn't really know what I was doing. In my second orchestra piece, kind of had more of an idea, but those first two pieces, I kind of wrote with a short score first and then orchestrated later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so not like a piano score, but like a short score with like maybe like 6 to 8 staves. And yeah, that's for the first two pieces. For this piece, I kind of started out that way, but then it got a bit, I was cutting it a bit too close, and then I started orchestrating, and yeah, so it was a bit different, I guess, for this piece.
But
And
I mean, sorry, please.
oh, just one more thing was that I think I was trying to apply my explorations in texture from like my chamber pieces to the orchestra. That was something that was challenging myself to do. Because previously when I wrote my orchestra pieces, I thought more about harmony first, and then the piece would be more harmonically driven. Yeah.
And you mentioned like, the first two pieces you wrote. I mean, we all learn from experiences. Uh, all of us. I cannot imagine the first performance I did. It must be terrible. But what do you take away from each piece that propel you to the next piece? Like, what were your lessons or things that you tell yourself? Oh, I must make sure I do this, or I must make sure I must watch out for that.
You mean for orchestra pieces?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't remember from my first piece, my second piece. Like I hardly remember my first orchestra piece actually. But for my second piece to write this piece, I can say that my second piece it felt very disjunct. Like I was trying to do a lot of things. Like each section is like a completely new piece. So I think for this piece, I was more um, conscious of that, and I really tried to like make use of the material as much as I can before like moving on to the next thing. And even then, I try to like link it back to the previous thing because I think in my previous orchestra piece, it was like cut next thing, cut next thing, which might be an interesting thing to explore as well. But yeah, that's just what I think.
Like kind of switching TV channels in some ways when there's so many ideas and then you just jump to the next thing. Whereas this one is much more concise in terms of your materials.
Yeah, like I would say this is more coherent, whereas the other piece was like it felt like it could have belonged to like material from three different pieces.
Huh. And
Yeah.
during the preparation for this piece, did you all get to workshop this piece, or was it just kind of like rehearsal and then performance?
Um, for Ashes and Embers at Aspen, we were only given 30 minutes. It's actually performed in a reading. So this recording was actually from a reading. So, when I said very good musician, yeah, that's what I meant. Because I think they'll probably all start reading. You know, you don't really prepare for an orchestra reading for composers. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the piece is 6 minutes, so they probably read it through twice before recording the thing.
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, there was a little slip up in the percussion, but it's not too obvious. So
And how about those moments of silences at the beginning and also at the end? I always thought that was quite eerie in some ways, where there's just some very very light text, like very heavy texture, and suddenly just space, very very deliberate space, and then the action begins.
hmm. um, I think the texture at the beginning is sort of so overwhelming that you sort of need like a break from it, to really kind of hear what's going on and like see what's going on. Um, so that for me was like, which was why I had those like breaks in the beginning of the piece. And I sort of had like the horn, the brass instruments, I think it was the horn, like they were sort of like the on and off switches for
Mm.
the whole texture. In the beginning, yeah, and at the end, that was the kind of quality that I was going for, like the eerie feeling where, all that's left is the ashes and the embers.
There are a couple of comments and questions.
Yeah.
Chen Wei is saying that the opening imagery of the flames is very memorable. The tubular bell seem to allude to the cathedral. Usually, the cathedral bells toll for the deceased, and in this case, it's the cathedral itself going down. I mean, that's very beautifully put.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And
Um, yeah, that's a really nice description.
Charity is asking, what was the beginning process to composing this piece like? Was it mainly a harmonic or gestural approach, or otherwise?
Yeah, so um, for this piece, um, like I was saying previously, my pieces were more harmonically driven. So
Hmm.
for this piece, I think I was more conscious of that, and I wanted it to start from thinking about texture um, and gesture, I guess. Yeah, so I guess it was starting from a more gestural and textural approach.
And when you say you usually compose more harmonically, do you mean like you compose in shorthand and then you kind of figure out the harmonies on the piano, or just kind of conceptually? And this is an interesting question because I have friends also studying in the UK, and studying with um, George Benjamin, and he was telling me that he would still go to lessons, and George Benjamin will play the pieces on piano, and they would talk about harmony, and completely atonal harmony, but he would be like, oh no, I think this should be an F sharp instead of an F. Yeah, this sounds correct this way. And I'm just wondering, is that how does that approach sound to you? And
Um, I mean, I do definitely work out harmonies at the piano,
Mhm.
and I think mostly in terms of intervallic relationships. Although I kind of do have perfect pitch, so um, there are some pitches that I would say like heavy that pitch, I guess. So, which is why like for this piece, I had to be really conscious of that and like tell myself that I'm going to be starting from texture and like that's where my starting point is, and like sort of care less about the pitch, I guess. Not that I completely don't care about like what notes I'm writing down, but I think of them more as like a cloud, I guess.
Mhm.
That's one way to put it. Does that
and
answer your question?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm always very very fascinated by the whole composition process. I mean, I took compositions for lessons for a while when I was at Eastman, but it was just let's not go even let's not even go there. But I'm just uh curious about this whole creative process, because I mean composers really is plucking things from the sky and putting it into music, and I think that's fantastic. Chen Jin is asking about what were some of the challenging moments writing this piece.
Um, hmm.
The lack of time, obviously, is
Yeah, that
always a
is
problem.
definitely one. Yeah, I think I wrote this piece in like 3 weeks. So yeah, time was definitely a factor. But I think when it comes to writing for orchestra, there are many challenges involved. Like it's so hard to even think about balance. I think balance is one thing. Um, there's some things that I actually wrote for the flute in the second section that I thought would be exposed enough, but you can't really hear it actually in the performance. So, there's some things that I would definitely change in terms of
Hmm.
orchestration. Um, yeah, but I guess that comes with more experience. So maybe in my next piece I'll know better.
And I guess like in my role as a conductor, when I get scores as well, there are also, I think some of the first few things that I will look out for is also like balances and stuff, that I try to understand the gesture, and then I try to figure out, okay, what would be practical? How can I make this work? Chop chop. And in some ways, Kevin is also asking about like he was complimenting how the recording was sight read. That's insane. Were there any complications during the rehearsal process that, since you guys had such a brief rehearsal together?
Mm, I wouldn't say there were a lot of complications actually. So I met with the conductor beforehand and he looked at my piece and um, I think one of the things that we talked about was like what is important because like there's so much going on in the texture. Like so the questions he was asking me was mostly like in this whole texture, like what do you want to hear? That kind of thing. And I would tell him like, oh, what the focus is, what the focus should be. And I think that process of like talking to the conductor beforehand and really like looking into at the piece with him, that really helped the process.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the conductor's role is really, especially for a piece, for this kind of particular thing, I need to record it, I need to put it out in this amount of time. It's really to identify what are the places that what are the important places that needs to be highlighted, and what's gestural. I mean, like he wouldn't spend time just to work out the quintuplets versus the four rhythms in the winds. It's just gestural. It's just a texture. It just needs to have
Yes.
a shape, and then you go through it. But the important lies in the brasses and the pizzas, the difference in dynamic, and that's really important. Great.
Mhm.
Um, that's really wonderful. And I would just like to ask, like, are there any kind of upcoming projects that you want to tell us about?
Uh, it's so uncertain, this time. Like there are
Yeah.
like things that like I'm looking forward to, but I'm like not sure if they're happening. But okay, so I'll tell you, there are two things that I'm quite excited for, I guess, in these are scheduled for 2021. So um, one thing would be writing for voice again. I'm writing a piece for vocal ensemble and percussion quartet. So that's quite exciting. And also in December for a workshop in Thailand, I'm writing a piece for a chamber piece for saxophone, trombone, guitar, piano, and percussion. And I'm really looking forward to that because I've been writing a lot of like piano plus pieces and I really want to get out of that. Yeah.
I mean, the repertoire of piano ensemble is so vast, but at the same time, I mean, there's something about the combination of instruments that limits the sound world a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to keep writing like pieces with the same instrumentation back to back, at least for me. Yeah.
Great. And so before the session, Yuting was saying, she still has school and she's finishing. You just finished your last class last night.
Well, actually, I still have class next week.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So when does the semester end for you?
Next week is the last week, and then we have final.
And finals, great. Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, like most of the summer festivals have now been cancelled. So I guess we're
Yeah.
really,
Well, for the one in Thailand, it has been postponed to December. So, well, let's hope it's happening in December.
yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Emily is saying, looking forward to seeing you at
Yeah.
ICIT. I guess that's the
Yeah, that's the one in Thailand. Yeah.
fantastic. Great. Well, I just have a question to all the audience listening out there. If you have any more questions for Eating, please feel free to um, write them in the comments this side, below or to the left or right. And since this is kind of our last episode of this installment, I would love to hear, what are some of the things that you guys might be interested in listening to, interviews or kind of repertoire sessions where we kind of discover interesting music together. I've always felt that that the exposure to contemporary music in Singapore is a little bit limited since I came back, I think last year. I mean, there are a group of people who are really into this, but for the general kind of music community, it's still kind of a, oh, is it contemporary music? Do I, can I? There's a kind of a war, and one purpose of doing this series to talk to composers is to discover new repertoire and to really realize that actually it's really a artificial war that we kind of self-made because we just think we don't know it, and actually a lot of the music is very very personable, just like all the composers are. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Thank you for putting this series together. Yeah, I listened to all the interviews with the other composers before that, and it was very interesting and very engaging, and I learned a lot from all of them.
and I think it's really fun because when you see like your colleagues and your seniors and everybody kind of showing this is what we've been working on for the past few years. It's really fun, and it's not like in the studio class setting, but everybody has such different diverse developments, right? It's really quite amazing that um, and maybe that's one area that I'm very very curious to also dive into for the second installment is to talk to composers who kind of worked in Europe, or because that's, I think for the first installment it has been quite American centric, but I mean that's where most of us studied, and it's kind of natural because of our connections to Peabody, and I was also in exchange at Peabody and had a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that might be a really interesting idea to look at in the second installment. So I'm just going to check the comment section real quickly. Great. And Chengjin has a very very nice comment, and it's so great to hear everybody's awesome music. I think that's really the point. I don't know how is it for composers, but for conductors, for example, like it's a very solitary kind of thing. So everybody kind of just goes into their little hole and studies their own music, but there's not so much sharing, collective sharing. Um, in general. I mean, this period, there's a lot of like Facebook groups for conductors. It's really, really exciting and fun. But I thought this is a great opportunity that all the composers can listen to each other and be like, wow, that's really cool. I really like that. And kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's similar for us. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
No, absolutely. It's a great pleasure to learn so many different pieces from so many different people. And I hope the music community will, be more open and more welcoming. Um, yeah, the saxophone piece I really like. It's very cool. And I hope it gets picked up soon. Great. So that um, is episode 6 of Unboxing New Music with Boon Hua, and tonight's guest is Tan Yuting. So thank you all for watching, and please keep your eyes peeled for more updates coming soon about what's going on with Unboxing New Music. Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.